Yesterday was a Jewish holiday. Really, it was a Memorial Day. It was Yom HaShoah, Holocaust Remembrance Day. It's not widely observed. The Shoah, the Holocaust. How does one speak about the unspeakable? It's too large. It's unimaginable. And there are no words. This year marks 70 years since the conclusion of the Holocaust, although for its victims, it never concluded. And Wednesday, 2 days ago, was 70 years to the day that the British 11th Division liberated the Nazi concentration camp of Bergen-Belsen. Elie Wiesel was asked if he feared that the Holocaust would be forgotten. And his response was, no, he didn't fear it would be forgotten. Rather, he feared it would be trivialized. I didn't understand what he meant by that when I first heard it. Later, I had a greater understanding. I'd like to share thoughts about two areas. One of them are lessons that we might learn, indeed unexpected lessons that I think we can learn from the Holocaust. And the second area that I'd like to share some thoughts about are what we Jews might do in response, what we Jews might do today. So the lessons. What are some of the lessons, particularly unexpected lessons? If you ask many Jews why we were the victims of the Holocaust, we weren't the only ones, but we were overwhelmingly the victims, you'll usually hear because we were the scapegoats. Did you hear that? The Jews were the scapegoats. That's what I was told. The economy was bad, so the Jews were blamed. I want to suggest that if you hold that view, and it is probably the most widely held view, I want to suggest that you rethink it. Because it's tautological. It doesn't answer why we were chosen to be the scapegoats. Think about it. All through history, the same group is the scapegoat? It makes no sense. Because it implies that it could be any group. We weren't scapegoats. And there's even a danger in thinking we were. In 1924, Hitler, Yamach Shemo, his name should be erased. Hitler wrote in Mein Kampf, "The Jews are the conscience of the world. We must destroy the conscience. We must destroy the Jews." He was saying, in his own words, that the Jews were the world's conscience. Jews remind the world of what's right and what's wrong, and that's why they need to be destroyed. Hitler didn't use the Jews as an excuse for the Holocaust. The other way around. The Holocaust was created to destroy the Jews. The final solution, the Nazi plan to destroy the Jewish people, was the culmination of years of Nazism, and it was the raison d'etre. It was the reason for the war. One of the most important books that I believe was written about the Holocaust was written by a woman named Lucy Davidovich. The name of her book tells you everything you want to know. The name of her book is called The War Against the Jews. The purpose of the Shoah was to destroy Jews and Judaism. It was a war against the very values that Judaism brought to the world, that every human being was made B'Tselem Elohim, in the image of God, that no race was inferior to the other. There's a lesson there. We weren't scapegoats. We were the conscience of the world. Hitler himself said it. We were hated because we were Jews, because of what we stood for. If we're scapegoats, we de-Judaize the Holocaust. That's a mistake. Understand we were hated for the very reason, because of the values we stood for. The second lesson comes from an idea that I learned many, many years ago. It's not mine, but my friend Rabbi Joseph Telushkin. And he may have taken it from somebody else. The Jews are the moral miner's canary of the world. You know the miner's canary, that when men and women, but mostly men, go into mines, there are noxious, deadly fumes there, but they can't smell them. They're not sensitive enough. So they take a canary into the mine. The canary is sensitive, and if they see the canary is sick or it dies, it's a statement, there's noxious fumes, there's poison here. Get out of the mine. The Jews are the moral miner's canary of the world. We are the first to smell the fumes of noxious and evil regimes, but we are never the last. And if the world learns this, they'll know that those who try to hurt the Jews are not going to stop with the Jews. The Soviets started with the Jews, but they didn't end with the Jews. Those evil elements within Islam who want to destroy Israel and talked about it decades ago, you think they're going to end with the Jews? You think Iran, which says death to the Jews, death to Israel, is going to end with Israel and the Jews? It's vital for the world to see that the Jews are a litmus test, a moral litmus test. Those that go after us will go after everybody else. And it's vital for the world to understand that lesson. There's another lesson to be learned, that the only way to fight evil is to stop it with fighting evil. I fear the world has not learned that. All one needs to do is pick up the front page of even today's Los Angeles Times and read about Boko Haram and see the horrific viciousness. You don't stop such evil with discussion. We should have learned that from Chamberlain. You have to fight evil. Otherwise, evil destroys good. And I learned indeed that Elie Wiesel's, as he often is, was prophetic because it can be trivialized. In 1993, I made a trip to Poland with my wife and my sister-in-law and her husband, the four of us. We rented a car and we drove to Krakow, just the four of us, a little tiny Opel. It was early Sunday morning when we were staying in Krakow, and we had made the decision that that would be the day that we would drive the car to the Auschwitz concentration camp. I remember waking up that morning and thinking, as oddly as this may sound to you, what do you wear? It was a blazing hot day, humidity, probably 95%. Do you wear shorts? It seemed disrespectful to me. Do you eat breakfast when you think of what the men and women of Auschwitz were subject to? We walked to the lobby, the four of us, and as we were about to get into our car, we took a moment. We saw many people in the lobby, and there was a tour company. And a woman stood up, and she was saying to the different members, people in the group, she said over her megaphone, "Tours today, tours to the salt mines, tours to the countryside, tours to Auschwitz." Another tour. Can the Holocaust be trivialized? Now I understood what Professor Wiesel meant when he shared that idea. And I remember driving our car in the middle of the beautiful countryside of southwest Poland. And we crossed railroad tracks. And we stopped when we realized those indeed might have been the very tracks that our people in herded cattle cars so tightly packed that many of them died en route, they could hardly breathe. Those could have been the very tracks they crossed. And I'll share with you another lesson, one that I fear has not been learned. There is absolutely no relationship between education and moral behavior. Let me just repeat that. There is absolutely no relationship, no correlation between education and moral behavior. Germany was the most educated society of its day. Germany was arguably the most technologically advanced society of its day. You all know Leica cameras. You all know great German cars. That didn't start now. That's been going on for 70 or 80 years. And yet the most educationally and technologically advanced society of its day created an evil so horrific. The Einsatzgruppen. The Einsatzgruppen were the mobile SS killing units. You've seen pictures of them where they would hold a rifle and force Jews to dig mass graves. This is before the concentration camps were into full swing. There were 4 groups of the Einsatzgruppen, 4 groups. Group A, Group B, Group C, Group D. They studied who joined the Einsatzgruppen. Of the 17 leaders of Group A, 9 had PhDs. You can be very well educated and a saint, and you can be very well educated and do evil. There is no correlation between education and moral behavior. The greatest support that Stalin got in the United States was from university professors. Let's not forget that. Let's send our kids to learn. Let's send our kids to study. Get well educated, but don't live under the illusion that it will make a better human being. It may not. And similarly, there is no correlation between art and morality. Germany gave us Bach, gave us Beethoven, gave us Schubert, gave us Brahms. You can cry at Brahms' third, do-do-do, do-do-do, and you can kill mother and child with a single bullet. Don't worship art. Enjoy art. Appreciate art. I love art. But let's not live under the illusion that great art makes great people. The Greeks were great artists. They left their children out to die on mountaintops. Remember? Exposure. The Jews were not great artists. They told the world that that child is in the image of God, irrespective of whether that child has a physical or a mental deformity. You tell me that great art makes great human beings, and I'll point to you it doesn't. It can, but there's not necessarily a correlation. There are many other lessons to be learned. But let me share with you what we Jews might do today in response to the Holocaust. One is we can drop Judaism. We can simply leave it. It isn't worth it. One can say, I don't want to be a part of this people who is hated. And you know what? I get that. I understand that. Incredibly, that's not what most survivors did. And that tells me a lot. One might say, who am I to give up my Judaism when, given all they went through, they did not? Or another response is to turn against God. How could a good God allow such evil and cruelty? I get that too. But most survivors didn't do that. Perhaps, just perhaps, our Jewish response to the Shoah, to the Holocaust, is to love Judaism, to be affirmatively Jewish, to lead committed Jewish lives. The Shoah is not the reason I love Judaism. I would have loved Judaism prior to 1939. I don't want anti-Semitism to be my sole motivation to being a committed Jew. And so I don't talk about the Holocaust to induce guilt or to motivate people to be Jewish. It's not my way. But I have to say, in my heart, I know that somehow subliminally, every time we study, every time any of us go to synagogue, any time any of us offer a prayer or simply delight in being a Jew, every time we show devotion to God, that somehow that is some small victory for Judaism and some fist to those who tried to destroy us. Perhaps our Jewish response to the Holocaust should be to appreciate America, a country in which we can live freely and happily as Jews more than any other country on earth, except for Israel. And perhaps our response should be to love Israel and to do for Israel and to fight for Israel. There is so much more, but I'll leave you with this last thought. We are a blessed generation. While certainly individuals of this generation have lost and suffered, we as a generation of American Jews have not. Thank God. Ironically, one of the greatest gifts that we have is that we can meet those who have suffered. We can meet survivors. We should buy every account that they write, every book that they write. Spend the money and put it on your shelf. Even if you don't read it, let them know and think that their books are being read. But more so, meet them. We must meet them. Here's a chilling thought. We are the last Jews in the world who will ever meet a Holocaust survivor. We are the last Jews who can look at a survivor in their eyes. We have to meet them and cherish them. 60,000 men and women survived the Bergen-Belsen Nazi camp that was liberated 70 years ago Wednesday night. Estimates are that only about 2,500 are still alive. We have little time left. The next time that any of us feels the need for inspiration, think about the survivors. They married, they had families, they went to work, and they humbly contributed to their societies. They are walking miracles. You and I can meet walking miracles. For that alone, we owe them and we owe God words of gratitude beyond measure. Shabbat Shalom.